A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you again for tuning in to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. It is great to have you with us today. Have a fantastic program lined up for you. Maj Toure is going to join us, the founder of Black Guns Matter, fresh off of his congressional testimony. Talking to a House subcommittee yesterday. Plus, we'll talk with Steffon Josey, a police officer and a guy who wants to become a hometown hero, wants to go back and serve in the department in the town where he grew up. But there's one problem. This is New Jersey, and New Jersey's crazy gun laws are getting in the way, apparently, from Steffon Josey being able to go back to his hometown and serve as a police officer. Plus, we've got our armed citizen story of the day. We have our good deed of the day. We have another story from the field criminal justice system. But let's get to our interview with our friend Maj Toure, founder of Black Guns Matter. He, again, testifying before Congress yesterday, spent some time with us today talking about that testimony, what he hoped that the members of Congress took away, and where Black Guns Matter is headed next. Take a look and a listen. Maj, it's so good talking with you again, sir. Thanks for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me on, kid.
Absolutely. And listen, man, congratulations and thank you on behalf of gun owners everywhere for your testimony yesterday. House Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security holding a hearing on community responses to gun violence in our cities, and you were asked to testify.
Yeah, I was there to bring a little bit more balance and respect for, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution to the conversation. First, I think that the other panelists have some good points going on in regards to healing and trauma and things of that nature. But where we vehemently disagree is adding more legislation onto the community. In an area that we've already recognized it doesn't have the best, police-community relations. So asking for more federal involvement, which means obviously police and so forth and so on, isn't the best way at all. It's actually not a good way. But outside of that, we found common ground in those areas, and it was funny to watch some of the Democrats try to avoid me completely.
Well, I can imagine. Well, listen, I mean, what you're talking about. Nobody can accuse you. Like, look, if I went and testified yesterday and said, look, Cam, you live in Farmville, Virginia. You're, a white guy in his 40s. What the hell do you know about this issue? You're there in Philadelphia. I mean, last time we talked with you was a couple of months ago, and you said you lived about a block or so away from where this incident went down, where you had an individual who was, holed up in his house shooting at police officers. I mean, you are there in the thick of the violence, almost 250 homicides in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania this year, and yet you're not a believer that more gun control is the answer. So, of course, they don't want to talk to you. You confuse and confound them.
Right. It was very clear. So I think that when you do the hearings like that, there's a bunch of people, some Democrats, some Republicans, whatever. Right. I think that initially some of the people weren't too familiar with my face because I had on a suit. First of all, my jacket was amazing. That's number one. I cannot ignore that. Okay. Because I'm so used to wearing jeans and a hoodie and BGM merchandise and stuff like that, I think they weren't too familiar. But then when I gave my initial, opening statement, and it was along the lines of there's a way to, protect our communities from trauma and negligence and ignorance while preserving our freedom, I immediately saw the shift on, the Democratic side, and they started like cherry picking, asking questions, and opening the floor up for the other three panelists. Fortunately, though, there was one Democrat who ironically was Miss Lee, the lady that said the ARs weighed like 10 boxes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
She actually was more, and that's probably because she wasn't there for my opening statement, but she asked a few questions. Fortunately, some of the Republican leadership, asked some good questions and gave me an opportunity to express from our perspective. And, and we were able to find some commonality, but absolutely, more the Democrats was like, yeah, not going to give him the opportunity to talk, but it's all good. We still got the message out.
And so what was that message that you wanted those members of Congress, even if they weren't engaging with you directly, what did you want them to take away from your testimony?
The primary thing was, yes, we do have a problem with ignorance and lack of education in these urban centers. We are not going to deny that. We are not going to deny that there's higher levels of, ignorance around firearms in these areas. We're also not going to deny that these are the areas that have higher levels of more and more legislation and gun control. We're also, on top of that, not going to ignore that when we apply a cultural shift via education, understanding the rights and responsibilities of firearms ownership, we also see drastic, improvement. And doing that from a culturally relevant and data-driven perspective is actually the solution. I made a point there to talk about, licenses to carry, which have set increased over the last 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the homicide rates actually over that same or somewhat equivalent time period, those homicide rates have steadily been decreasing as well. So you can't ignore that portion. And so saying that to say, what I know that was, regardless of if you asked me the question or not, what was left, because you still gave me the opportunity to say my opening remarks. What was now in the zeitgeist forever is the fact that our organization, Black Guns Matter, has curriculum and solutions, and other organizations as well, that where we can educate, protect the community while preserving freedom, and that was felt tremendously. If it wasn't felt, they would have continued to ask me questions, because I wouldn't have had anything to say that was in opposition to what their agenda was. But it came across. Shouts to those Republicans, and as people warmed up, even some of the Democrats who kind of gave me a little bit more mic time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, we're all Americans, so that message was definitely it came across yesterday.
Well, and look, unfortunately, right now we are in a time where most gun control support is coming from Democrats, most support for the Second Amendment is coming from Republicans. But look, this is a right that we all possess, whether you are a Elizabeth Warren supporter, or you're a Donald Trump supporter, or you're supporting the Libertarian candidate, whoever that might be. This is a right for all of us, and so there's no reason why anybody on the left side of the aisle should dismiss you out of hand, except that what you're talking about, again, runs entirely and directly counter to the ideas of gun control advocates. They call themselves, quote unquote, gun safety advocates, but their idea of gun safety is don't own a gun, right? To make gun ownership as taboo as possible, which is what has happened, I would say, in places like Chicago, in Philadelphia, in Los Angeles, and San Francisco, where that culture of lawful gun ownership has been obliterated by the government primarily through their gun control laws. Right. And so what you're talking about, again, bringing back that culture of responsible gun ownership through education, through training, talking about the rights and responsibilities that people are simply not aware of in a lot of these communities. Right. And it might blow the minds of some gun owners to understand that you can live in a big blue city, and you can, just like you never have to learn to drive a car, you never learn about your right to keep and bear arms. You never learn about it. So I think that the work that you're doing is absolutely invaluable. And again, I'm so glad that you had the chance to talk about this in front of Congress. Now, I do want to ask you, because, look, you're fighting an uphill battle, and you are running for city council in Philadelphia, correct?
Absolutely. November the 5th. Everybody listening, shoot over. Look, I'm up against a mountain. It's like 7 Goliaths that I'm fighting. But if you guys can support, you can donate to the campaign anywhere in the country. If you want to be a digital volunteer where you repost stuff, we'll send you an email. Hey, today we need you to post this. Please, everybody, go to majforphilly.com, MAJFORPHILLY.com. But yes, that's the long and shameless plug answer. But the short answer is yes, I am running for city council in Philly. I
don't mind the shameless plug, but I do want to ask you, as a candidate for city council, Council President Darrell Clark, another council member, proposing a ban on guns in parks and recreation centers. There have been some shootings in Philadelphia parks over the summer. They would have to get approval basically by the state because of firearms preemption law in Pennsylvania. But I'm curious again, we're just talking about bringing back that culture of lawful gun ownership. Where do you come down on a gun ban in parks and rec centers in Philly?
No, I don't want more rules. I actually want to repeal some of the rules, and I'm going to make it a concentrated effort of mine in Philadelphia. And if I win as city council person, I'm definitely going to do an excellent job, and then I'm going to go take the mayor's seat. But the reality is, just like the panel yesterday, we need more logical, data-driven, factual, freedom-based perspective in these different, peer groups. And as a city council person, I'd be in his peer group. So no, that's not going to help because the shootings aren't, first of all, trying to shoot and kill somebody regardless of where you're at, not in a defensive situation, that's already unlawful. There's already a rule against that. And so the guys that happen to be doing that aren't dropping their guns off at the park and going, wait a minute, guys, we can't do this illegal activity right here because there's a sign right here.
Right.
That's not happening. So adding, again, like I said yesterday, you can't legislate that, So no, I'm in no way, shape, or form, in any way, unequivocally, am I ever going to be adding for more gun control. I am never going to do that. The root of gun control is extremely racist. The outcome, even if the intent of the people pushing for more legislation, they may not know or they may not deliberately be trying to be racist, but the outcome, the amount of black men and brown people in America, arrested for just simple possession, not robbery. If you're doing robbery and raping, I hope you go to jail. I want you to go to jail, right? I want you to rehab yourself and come out and be a productive member of society, but for just having the inanimate object, absolutely not. So no, hopefully, I'll be able to sit down with Mr. Clark, who I have respect for. He has committed, we can disagree, but I have respect for his position to public service for over 20 years now. I think there's some areas where we can collaborate with him being, the president of City Council, and we can give him some information that gives him the work that we've actually done. He's actually wrote a letter about our work about a year or two ago about the work that we've done at Black Lives Matter. So he's familiar with it. But again, at that time, I wasn't in his peer group.
Yeah.
So becoming a city council person, you can't really ignore me the same way. Not saying that he was deliberately trying to ignore me, but it has a different spin on it, And so I disagree based on data, and based on what we've seen. I could understand that move more if those people doing those shootings at those parks were law-abiding, lawful, responsible gun owners just had a bad day and they decided to shoot up a park. But unfortunately, that's not the case. It's uneducated, misinformed, irresponsible young people that I also would like to reach out to help them course correct. Because I'm not leaving, how back in the day they said no child left behind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not leaving any American that wants to learn. There's no American, no Philadelphian left behind. So I disagree with that approach, but I understand what he's trying to accomplish, and I'm willing to work with, Mr. Clark to make sure that we can mitigate some of that trauma while preserving freedom.
Maj Toure, Black Guns Matter, Philadelphia City Council candidate. And you got to come back at some point. Let me know if you got any time next week, Maj, because you brought up a couple of things that I've been talking a lot about on Bearing Arms in terms of Beto O'Rourke and his proposed gun ban and compensated confiscation plan and Cory Booker's federal gun licensing plan. Talking about basically replacing the war on drugs with the war on guns and how the primary victims are going to continue to be young minority men. And this is something that gun control supporters, they absolutely don't want to talk about. But it is an inconvenient truth for them. And I do want to keep talking about it. So will you come back and let's talk about that next week?
Absolutely, Cam. When you need me, I'm there.
All right, buddy. Listen, thank you again so much for your testimony yesterday. Thanks for joining us on the program today. Have a great weekend campaigning, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. I'll talk to you in a bit.
All right. Thank you, sir. Maj Toure with Black Guns Matter here on Bearing Arms Cam & Company. So I mentioned at the beginning of the program an interview with Steffon Josey Davis, who I'm really glad that Steffon reached out to me. I've known Steffon for a number of years. First started covering his case long before Governor Christie issued a pardon. And as you'll hear from Steffon, ultimately this is for him a matter of justice in what he is looking for. Steffon, it is so good talking with you again, sir. Thank you for joining me on the program today.
No problem, sir. No problem. Glad to be here.
So tell us, get us caught up here. For those who remember your story from a few years ago, yes. You were arrested and charged with illegally possessing a handgun in the state of New Jersey, correct?
Yes, I was arrested for 2C39-5B, which is unlawful possession of a firearm, which is a second-degree felony in the state of New Jersey, which carries with 10 years maximum in prison with a 3-year mandatory in prison.
All right. And for those, again, familiar with the facts of this case, this was your legally owned gun. How did it end up in your car?
Okay, so that morning I was getting ready for work. My little sister came into the garage at the time. I was at the front of the car, pretty much on the passenger side, where I placed my bulletproof vest on the front seat. My little sister came in while I was trying to disarm the firearm, so I quickly just placed it in the glove compartment because I already had the glove compartment open at the time. So when I put that in there, placed it in there, I walked away, put her back upstairs, continued on with my day, and just left with it in the glove compartment at the time.
Okay.
Now, when I was pulled over, I was stopped for my registration. My registration had lapsed. Forgot. It happens. When I was pulled over, I initially let the officer know that, hey, I have a firearm in my glove compartment. Before I even attempt to grab for anything, I'm just letting you know. So, with that being said, they took the firearm. They let me go. They told me to come down here on the Monday to come claim the firearm, which I did. And when I went down there, I had got word that the prosecutor's office was going to prosecute me, and I was being charged with a second-degree felony. They arrested me, then they released me on my own accord at the police department, and then I was just given a court date at that point in time.
Okay. Now, what originally happened? Did you end up taking a guilty plea to reduce charges in that case?
I did, because at the same time, I had an attorney at the time that did not advise me of the amnesty period, which was 180-day legislation that Governor Christie signed in a motion to where as though you must maintain possession, to where as though I shouldn't have even been charged or even convicted of the crime. So with that being said, I was faced with 10 years. I've never been in any trouble in my life to where as though I would know the process and procedures of this whole judicial system. So just being in fear of leaving my family, just in fear for my own life, I just took the plea bargain. And when I took the plea bargain, I was given 6 months of probation with a $200 fine for all that. And my life was ruined at that point.
Absolutely. And again, 6 months probation. $200 fine. Clearly, in this case, even the prosecutors knew you're not a violent criminal. You weren't possessing that firearm to do any harm.
Yes.
But they got to have that conviction, right? They got to include that stat.
And when you read the court docket where we were going through the trial, pretty much the judge was even made determinations that certain things weren't necessary in this case because they could see I wasn't a felon. They could see I didn't have a lengthy criminal record. Prior to that, I was only arrested one time when I was 18.
Yeah.
Something that was dismissed, something I didn't even do. So it was really no criminal record to begin with for them to have grounds where we're going to say, we're going to give this guy 3 years. We're going to give this guy 10 years.
Right. Well, okay. So after that sentence is handed down, Governor Christie gets involved, right?
Yes. In 2015, Governor Christie gets involved. After I made all my press runs, I was reaching out to everybody that I can reach out. That's how we met. I was able to get the attention of the governor, and he gave me a full pardon. So with that pardon, it came with an expungement. So with that expungement, that also granted me to receive my firearms back. So I wrote a lengthy pardon application to the governor's office, and it was entertained eventually at that point in time to where I was pardoned by the governor. Now, when they gave me my firearms back, the arresting authority, Highland Park Police Department, had to give me my firearms and ammunition back once the expungement pardon was granted. And when that happened, I let them keep the ammunition. I took the firearm and I went on about my business.
And part of your business was you wanted to be in law enforcement. And so obviously this legal trouble, potentially derailed that. But once Governor Christie issues that pardon, your records are expunged. You actually applied to become a police officer there in that town where you were arrested.
Yes, the town of North Brunswick is where I'm originally from. Graduated from that school, met my fiance there. When I took the civil service test initially in 2011, I scored in the top 10. I've been scoring the top 10 ever since I was able to take this test. So in 2013, when I was initially arrested, I had to withdraw from the process through the Civil Service Commission. Now, when I had received my governor's pardon, I did appeal to the state, and on the grounds to where as though what was going on with my case, and they put me back on the list for hire with a 98.160, which was a score that I had. I was number one on the list for hire. Now, I have the 2015 docket that I went through the state, and they granted my appeal to place me back on the list. Now, the township of North Brunswick, here it states, this letter is to inform you that your name has been removed from the list for municipal police officer on competitive list due to unsatisfactory background check. You were arrested and convicted of unlawful possession of a handgun. Therefore, your name was removed from the list. This came out May 2nd, 2016. The Civil Service Commission granted my appeal, and it states here, therefore, it is ordered that the appeal be granted and Steffon Josey Davis' name be restored to eligible list for police officer S9RRR North Brunswick for prospective appointment opportunities only. This is the final administrative decision in this matter. Any further review should be issued in a judicial form. Now, this was from Henry Morrow, the Director of Appeals for the Civil Service Commission, and this was granted August 19, 2015. North Brunswick Police Department waited 9 months to deny me for the list, and now here we are, 2019, where I have to wait 3 years to take the test, which is now. So it's really a head spin right there.
Absolutely. And now before we get up to 2019, so after North Brunswick says, yeah, boy, sorry, Stefan, you still got these legal issues, even though they'd been expunged, you'd been pardoned. Mm-hmm. You eventually did achieve your dream of becoming a law enforcement officer, but it wasn't in North Brunswick, New Jersey.
Not at all. At this point in time, when I received the pardon, I was offered a position with the Baltimore City Police Department. Now, when it came up to where as though I was arrested and convicted on a firearms charge, well, they said, did you have an expungement? I said, yes, I did, and I also was granted an executive pardon from the New Jersey governor. And it was no question at that point in time. So there was no grounds for disqualification on their behalf because it was pardoned and it was expunged. They said your record is sealed. You are able to fulfill this position. And I feel as though in the state where I was arrested and convicted, or even the county where I was arrested and convicted, I have not been able to receive a job. My record has been unsealed, and my executive pardon was used against me on grounds to where as though I shouldn't receive the job because of the past conviction in that county.
All right, and so now here we are, 2019, 3 years after you had applied, and what are you seeking? What are you asking for, Stefan?
At this point in time, I filed a tort claim against the state of New Jersey. I also filed in reference to the state of New Jersey's 180-day amnesty period that was approved by legislation and signed into motion by Governor Christie in 2013 of August. I was arrested 45 days within that amnesty period to where I should have been arrested or even convicted on those grounds. Also, I have them on Title VII and Title X of the Civil Rights Act in violation. So this goes all the way up to the state, all the way down to the hiring department of North Brunswick. So at this point in time, if I can't get the position to where as though I should be able to succeed and be able to provide for my family in the state and county where I'm originally from, that once convicted me and had my record expunged and had an executive pardon, which is very hard to come by, then I'm just going to have to take matters into my own hands and I'm going to have to file suit. It's not fair.
Well, you're right. It's not fair. And honestly, we hear so much talk these days about criminal justice reform and ensuring that individuals who frankly never got a pardon, but were convicted of their crimes, that they get a second chance, right? Once that debt to society has been paid, we need to find ways for those individuals to reintegrate. Here you have a police department in a county that arrested you. I'm not an attorney, but it sounds like they shouldn't have at the time. But what we do know for sure is that, again, the governor has granted you a pardon. The record was expunged. Mm-hmm. It seems to me like this would be a really good opportunity for the county and for North Brunswick, New Jersey, to say, okay, you know what? We do believe in second chances. And Stefan, you've scored at the top of the list here. We want to welcome you to the force. We are a place where you can literally go from, being an arrestee to being a law enforcement officer. That's a pretty great story. The story of North Brunswick won't let you become a police officer, even though you've scored so high, because of their mistakes years ago. That's a not good story, Stefan. That's a very bad story.
It's not a good story, and at the same time, I'm a very well known and well recognized individual in that town. I played football for the town, gave them one of their best years that they had in probably over 20 years. I was a part of that. Well liked in the community, well liked in my school. Just all around, been a good guy. my whole life, and it's just an unfortunate situation. I guess my story shines a bad light on that department in their eyes, but everybody in the community that knows me wants me there. If I was to do a petition and say, hey, this community, do you want Steffon Josey there? I guarantee you I would have everybody say, as far as business owners, people that are in the community, teachers that are in the community, principals that are in the community, it gets no better than that at that point in time.
Has anybody told you, Stefan, look, man, you can't fight City Hall. There are lots of towns in New Jersey where you could get hired, but boy, you're just not going to win this fight against North Brunswick.
No. People have stated things like that, but I don't pay any mind. They said the same thing about my governor's pardon. I was told by lawyers. I was told by attorneys that this wasn't possible. It's highly unlikely, and it was done. I have the ability to get things done. We all work hard with the Second Amendment community. We all pull our resources, and it gets the proper attention that it needs to get, and it causes for review at this point in time, because I did reach out to the Attorney General's office in reference to this, and they forwarded that information to the Civil Service Commission. Now they have it under review. So it's really about how you get things done, how your planning is, and how the stars align at this point in time.
So you're kind of looking, it sounds like, at a multi-pronged approach here. You've still got the commission reviewing your claim and reviewing your appeal. But again, you talk about perhaps filing suit. So yes. What is the relief that you're seeking here in your tort claim? What does North Brunswick, New Jersey need to do in order for this claim to disappear and for you to be satisfied that things are on the up and up?
Well, at this point in time, I have them for discrimination. I have them violating Title VII and Title X. Because at the same time, it states employers may refuse to hire a job applicant based on arrest records or conviction records unless the conviction has been expunged or erased through governor's executive pardon. Now, that's a federal anti-discrimination law, and that's under Title VII. So I have them on that, and I also have the Oprah records that show that they've never hired anyone solely off the list unless it's a friend or family member or a veteran of any type of sort. Excuse me.
That's all right.
But that it's really unfair, and my scores are the highest that they can be. I was placed number 1 on the list. Why haven't I been hired? Why wasn't I even given an interview? I didn't even get a chance to interview. They just saw that, criminal record, arrest record. That's it. Expunged. It doesn't matter. That's what they do.
And again, I'm not an attorney, and I've been kind of eyeballs deep going through some of the legalese language there in New Jersey. You mentioned that an arrest or a conviction can be a prohibiting factor unless there's been an expungement. Is there not a carve out though for law enforcement? Does in other words, based on the language that I read, it says yes, if there's an expungement or a pardon that you can't be considered unless the position that you're applying for is in law enforcement. Is that what? Yes. North Brunswick is hanging their hat on? They can say, look, it doesn't matter that you got a pardon because you're applying for a job as a police officer?
Yes, they are using that. But in the state of New Jersey, it states in the law where it says the 4A4-4.7, removal of names. That's up to the Civil Service Commission's CEO or chair or designee's discretion. So they have to make that determination, whether or not it's acceptable or not.
Not the North Brunswick Police Department. No,
it says it straight in the Civil Service Commission's handbook. The Civil Service Commission title 4A.4-4.7, removal of names, nature and seriousness of crime, and it also states that it's up to the determination of the CEO, the chair, or designee may determine. So they have to determine whether or not that is. That's why it's under review right now.
Okay. Have you been told by the commission how long that review might last?
Well, as of now, we had to send out our supporting documents. It's due on the 30th of this month. This was sent out 2 weeks ago. So North Brunswick had to send their supporting documents, which they sent. They're fighting against that, which is a total in violation of any type of civil rights civil rights rules that the civil service commission can use that against you, but it's flawed. It has a flaw in it because it contradicts itself, stating that they may use that as grounds, but it's up to the chair of the CEO may determine this. But it also is a civil rights violation. But it also states that the police department can do that. But it's up to their discretion if they want to. They have to unseal it and reveal everything, but no other department has ever done that. Why am I a police officer now? But one department in a Middlesex County where I was once arrested and convicted, why are they holding that against me? But I'm a police officer now. I hold the shield. I swore to take the oath just like everybody else does.
And I think that ultimately, it can get real easy, getting kind of lost in the weeds here and looking at the legalese and all of the various government agencies involved. But, bottom line, you are a police officer.
Yes, I am.
And you would like to be a police officer there in your hometown. You've got the highest score on the civil service exam.
Yes.
And the department says no.
Yes.
None of that's good enough because we arrested you, and it doesn't matter that you got a pardon. It doesn't matter that it was a nonviolent offense, and it doesn't matter that happened during this amnesty period. Because we arrested you, you can never be a cop in North Brunswick, New Jersey. That's in essence what they're telling you.
At this point in time, that's what it seems like to me. Only because I had the pardon, I had the expungement, the firearms were released back to me. After I was given all that, I went right to the store and purchased more firearms. So I have no disability, but they can still use that as a disability to disqualify me from what they state. But the law states that with an executive pardon, you cannot do that. You still have the same rights that everybody else has. So what does an executive pardon really mean? What does an expungement really mean if they can unseal it and use that as grounds to disqualify you? So at this point in time, I also wanted to appeal to the Supreme Court, because when we initially wanted to appeal the decision, when the governor's pardon was granted, I couldn't even appeal to the state because the governor stepped in and then wiped it completely out.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to do initially was appeal to the state, get the charges dismissed off my record, also with an expungement and the governor's pardon on top of that. So when I do apply for a position, it states it's dismissed. And if anybody tries to disqualify me for any position because of that, that's in total violation. Again. But there's loopholes in this. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And it sounds like you got a heavy lift ahead of you in terms of actually getting those charges dismissed. But I'll be very curious to hear what the commission says when they issue the determination. Hopefully it's not going to be too long. And in the meantime, I appreciate you coming on the program and keep us up to date with what's going on in your case. You and I have been talking for years now, and I got to say, I was so excited and happy for you when you became a police officer, because I know that that's something that you've been working towards, even before your arrest. This was something that you wanted to do. And so to actually see you fulfill that has been fantastic. But again, I would love to see you, if you want to serve in your hometown, I'd love to see that happen.
It's definitely that's something that needs to be. After all this fighting we've been through, it's been 7 years. There should be no way. It should be no way possible that I should be barred from a place where I'm originally from, going through everything that we went through with this, to not being able to achieve a job in that town. It doesn't make any sense, or even that state. It just doesn't make sense. And
on the merits, that's the thing. On the merits, it sounds like you should be one of the next folks hired there.
Of course.
Hey, Stefan, again, thank you so much for your time, sir, and come back anytime you've got an update, okay?
Always. Yes, sir. Always. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Steffon Josey joined us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company. All right, let's get to today's Armed Citizen story. We'll get to our good deeds, actually plural, today, as well as our story from the failed criminal justice system, which once again, I swear I'm not intentionally doing this, but it's another story from Massachusetts, the I-Team, talking about suspects getting back out on the streets after just hours behind bars after facing arrest. Springfield, Massachusetts. This is a WWLP, and they're talking about the phenomenon of after-hours bail hearings. They say typically taking place at police departments when courthouses are closed. The person who's setting the bail is not a judge. In some cases, they may have no legal experience at all. Yeah, so WWOP found a case of a individual who was arrested for driving a stolen car, possession of drugs with intent to distribute, his 9th arrest. But he was back on the streets the same night after posting a $1,000 bail at an after-hours hearing. Yeah. And this, by the way, is not just a Springfield, Massachusetts story. This is taking place throughout the state of Massachusetts. They say in smaller cities and towns, bail commissioners conduct a majority of the hearings. These are ordinary citizens who are appointed by court administrators. They could be a truck driver, teacher, retail worker by day, and then be the ones responsible for setting bail by night. Many of them don't have any background in the criminal justice system or law enforcement. The police commissioner of Springfield, Cheryl Clapprood, says the system is arbitrary, saying, quote, it's only the on-duty clerk of courts, who's basically the on-call judge. We'll get clerks who are very sympathetic to our cause and the seriousness of the crime, and the bail might be a little higher, where some clerks may not be. Now, well, listen, you find that with the judges, too. It has to be noted, right? But our friends of the Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts have been talking about the failures of the criminal justice system in that state on a daily basis, and the refusal of lawmakers to get serious about it. Instead, they want to pass more gun control laws. I'm going to try to get Jim Wallace on the program from the Gun Owners Action League next week so we can talk more about this specific issue. Let's get to our armed citizen story of the day from News Channel 3 WREG in Memphis, Tennessee. Munford, Tennessee, where a suspected burglar shot by a homeowner there in Munford. I don't know if Mr. Munford had any sons when the town was in. Sorry, I know that was a horrible bad joke. Anyway, Tipton County Sheriff's Office says a homeowner noticed that his surveillance cameras outside his home were being moved. That seems awfully suspicious. So he grabbed his gun. He went out to see what was going on. And when he went outside, he found a man in his yard who then lunged at him. That's when the homeowner reportedly shot him. Suspect later identified as Thurman Morrow of Munford, Tennessee, treated at the hospital, then booked into the jail on aggravated assault and resisting arrest charges, according to the reports there at WREG. Now, our good deeds of the day. This is crazy. 2 stories, same police department, 2 different officers, 2 different dogs. I know. I love a good save a dog story, and we've got not one, but 2 of them. First, you can see this dash cam a video of a police officer in Pinellas Park, Florida, who ended up saving this dog after it got hit by a car while trying to cross I-275. Officer Joseph Puglia was on his way to work when he saw the dog actually get hit, pulls over, runs over to try to help the dog, scooped it up, rushed it to a local veterinarian. The dog has since made a full recovery. According to WTSP, the Pinellas Park Police Department said this incident is just another example of the dedication and compassion our officers have for our 4-legged friends. Now, the owner of this dog has not been found. Dog did not have a microchip. Dog did not have a collar. So right now, that dog, while he's recovered, is at the Pinellas County Animal Services Shelter. So hopefully he can find his forever home here before long. Now, again, the police chief talked about the dedication that officers showed to dogs in Pinellas Park, and it is true because we've got another story as well here. This from News Channel 8, reporting on a Pinellas Park police officer who ended up rescuing a injured dog stuck in a drainage canal. Officer Graham Fox. I know, Officer Fox saving the dog. Got the call after a woman noticed the injured pooch there in the drainage canal. She started trying to throw cheese down in the canal to try to lure him up, she said, but the cement walls were too steep. So Officer Graham Fox showed up, and according to Ashley LeBrand, who made the call to police, first thing he said when he got there was, quote, "Well, I guess we're getting wet today." So he climbed over a fence, down into the canal, waded his way through the yuck and the muck, and managed to make it over to the dog. Officer Fox says there are places you really don't want to be and shouldn't go, and I probably shouldn't have been in that canal, but he did. He went in to save the dog. Second dog, actually, that Fox has saved from a canal in as many months. Officer Graham Fox said he was incredibly thankful and friendly. Thankful to be out of the ditch, you could tell. So, dog, again, taken to animal services, no tag. But he did have a microchip, so they're trying to figure out who the owner of that dog is. And if they can't find the owner, Ashley LeBrant says she is happy to give that dog a forever home. She says, I love him. I really want to adopt him. She says if she gets the opportunity, she's already got the perfect name picked out. It's not Fox. It is Chance. And that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company on this Friday. We appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday with much more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. You can find us, if you would like, in a podcast form at Spotify, at Stitcher, at, what am I missing? Apple Podcasts, townhall.com. And of course, you can subscribe to Town Hall Media as well. And you can get the show via YouTube each and every day. Thanks again for being a part of the program. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here soon.